straight away, because this week we did chapter 12, so we're going to be doing both the phonetics and the Q codes, so we don't have to do any of that firsthand. If an amateur pretends there is an emergency and transmits the word Mayday, what is this called?
Number 3.
False or deceptive signal. Yep, don't do this. Please don't start panics when you don't need to. Okay. What are the restrictions of the use of abbreviations or procedural signals in the amateur service? Number 2. They may be used if the signal or codes are not secret. That's correct. So you can technically use 10 codes or Q codes or any sort of code you want, so long as it's not a secret code between you and the other party. But
you won't make any friends.
Yeah, 10 codes are not going to be. It's a 10-4. No. Yeah, no encryption on the air. So that's the law. How often must an amateur station be identified?
Every half hour.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning and end.
And the beginning and the end. Yeah. So at least every 30 minutes, and at the beginning and the end of every contact. Cool. Alright, this has got a lot of sections to it, but it starts there. What identification, if any, is required when two amateur stations begin communication?
Well, they got to identify themselves at the beginning. And then if the conversation goes over a lengthy period, they got to rebroadcast their call sign again.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Number 2?
Yeah.
So both stations must transmit both call signs?
That's correct, yeah.
Nope.
No. So you're only responsible for your own call sign, alright? That's the legal requirement. You have to identify who you are. It's always great if you know the other person's call sign so you can address them specifically.
Usually you hear that though, don't you?
Which, well, you do, but I mean,
But
especially
what do you do if the other person doesn't do it?
if the other person doesn't do it, probably shouldn't talk to them typically, but...
You telling him his call sign doesn't relinquish him of his responsibility under the law.
It's going to be a long night.
Normal operating procedure to, you call his, you use your call sign, he uses yours, he uses his.
Yeah.
Hold on now.
It's not legal.
No, hold on, it's going to be a long night.
Hmm?
It says right there, both stations must transmit their call signs. If I'm talking to you,
No, hang on, read that again. Read it again.
Both stations
Must transmit
must transmit
both call signs.
both call signs.
Not
No,
required.
you don't have to.
So if you have one, a call sign, and you're talking to me and I'm talking to you, you're responsible for Steve, and I'm responsible for Graham.
That's
So
it.
does that not?
That's not both.
No,
call
yeah, so
signs.
when it says both call signs, it would be, I would have to talk to Steve, this is VE3ZSH calling VA3TPS, which we kind of do on the radio anyway, but
Yeah.
legally, all I have to say is, this is VE3ZSH, hey Steve, how you doing?
That's right.
Okay.
Trickery, eh?
Yeah, I read it.
It's the way it's done.
Yeah.
You use both call signs, but that's not required by law. Just you are responsible only for your own.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long night.
This is a trick question.
So, that's the reason that question was actually in there, because it is kind of confusing. Typically we use both call signs, but legally speaking, only the first one's required. Alright, which of the following answers is not correct? Based on the bandwidth required, the following mode may be transmitted on these frequencies. Does everybody remember the bandwidth of every single mode?
No. However,
I thought it was number 2.
I think it's number 4.
4, fast scan? That's correct. Yeah,
The only reason I remember that is I've got it wrong so many times. And that's
Yeah.
why you should do those tests.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
doing it. Yeah, you're doing it by
I learned it
memory.
from the tests.
So yeah, active television or fast scan TV requires many megahertz of bandwidth, far more than anything below 440 can handle. So, yeah, and the 30 kilohertz you're allowed in the, the 2 meter band there. Yeah, it's not enough. So, but in 2 meter band is where you will typically do a contact to say, hey, do you want to do that? So for somebody who's kind of familiar with it, it might seem a little bit reasonable.
We're not allowed enough for television anyway. In
Oh,
any
yeah.
band, eh? Not really. Not like not what is it? FM?
HF or with HF, you just slow scan.
No, fast scan.
Oh, fast scan, yeah. You do it.
So we can in UHF?
They were saying that broadcast frequencies are a lot. The professional broadcast frequencies have more bandwidth to get the full signals out. We're allowed a smaller
Our
chunk.
band is narrow.
We're got a narrow bandwidth.
So with the bandwidth that you require, it's typically, I believe, 1.8 megahertz. You can have that kind of space if you go into UHF, into the 440, where you're allowed up to 10 megahertz in bandwidth. I would have to double check.
And professional broadcast is 50.
Professional broadcast is 50. Okay.
Yeah, so we're not allowed anywhere near what they're allowed.
No, so fast scan TV wouldn't be exactly what they would be doing,
No.
but I could double check.
Better
it,
than
but-
slow scan.
Yeah, yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what it actually looks like.
I've never actually played with it. Don't think you have either, Steve.
I've done a little slow, that program HRD will do slow scan.
Mhm.
So in 20 meters you can scan it, get it operating. You'll see guys transmitting cards and
Okay.
Donald Duck cards and signs and
Yeah,
stuff.
you get pictures.
Yeah, or they'll send a station. FMSK, I believe, you can have a conversation and send, like this one fellow in Colombia I was talking to last summer. First time I did it, he says, "Have you ever tried it?" No. I went up the band, we tried it, and he sent me a picture of a station.
Yeah, but the fast scan, I'd like to see the fast
Yeah, I haven't done the fast scan.
It'd be interesting to see if that is actually.
That's what I mean, there's so much you can do with this hobby, eh? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a good way to make contact on a repeater? Don't say breaker.
You know, what's that NCS?
What's your number 4?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So say the name of the call station, or this name of the station that you want to call, and then your own call sign. The reason we do this is because you're more likely to pick up your call sign first and then actually pay attention to a radio to listen to who's calling you. If you say your call sign first, people are kind of ignoring the radio, and then they'll hear their call sign and be like, "Oh, who called me?" Yes. So.
Terminal node controller.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to ask you about that. I was reading that. It's intermittent signals that it can be implemented in error correction by the retransmission,
Mhm.
and are less susceptible to fading, the QSB or QRM, QRN.
Mm-hmm.
We're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then,
Natural noise and man-made noise.
Basically, yeah.
yeah. I thought that that terminal node controller was an interesting.
TNC. Now a lot of the new radios have them installed right in.
Yep. So it's basically a digitizer. So it takes a digital signal and allows you to transmit on the radio. So.
So and he collects the requests, and then
Well, your program, a lot of these programs, this digital modes, is they send it over and over again.
yeah,
Like JT65 sends it over 48 seconds, continually sends the message through the binary code over and over again.
right.
So it has an error correction rate and all that stuff. And the programs, that's why it's so reliable with low power and under very bad conditions, because it continues to send it over and over again. And then the TNC allows that.
Are you thinking a network controller? You asked, you said him.
Yeah, he did.
What did I say?
He said him, he allows it.
Yeah, you're talking about a network controller.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, he said TNC, that's the terminal net controller.
This one here.
While we're waiting on that, I guess. What is the main purpose of a repeater?
3.
Number 3.
No, that's terminal node. Yeah, it's not a him. He said him.
Yeah, no, it's actually another computer.
It's a machine. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a machine.
right. Number 3.
To increase the range of portable and mobile stations. Yeah, pretty straightforward. 5 watts in, 100 watts out. It's a pretty good gain as far as I would consider
Yeah, really.
it. So, yeah, especially because you're not paying for those 100 watts. That club is somewhere. So, all right. What is the purpose of a repeater timeout timer?
I'll do.
Number 3.
Two. Number 2.
Number 2. 19 transmissions without pauses.
Yep. So the main reason for this is likely somebody who sat down on the mic button and is just broadcasting, and you're like, nobody can use a repeater, and we can't tell him he's sitting on it. So,
Yeah.
and then it finally kicks them off, and you can go back and stop holding on the button.
I've heard guys fall asleep on 2 meters. The other night, I'm not kidding you.
Oh man.
All of a sudden, he's like, well, then next you know, it's nothing. And I'm working away in the shop, and I finally heard beep, beep, beep as the repeater times out. And the guy he's talking to, Al, wake up, wake up!
Oh, man. Okay, so what is a CT-CSS tone?
What is a CT-CSS tone?
Is number 1.
Subaudible tone that activates a receiver audio output when present.
Okay, no.
Just a minute.
Tone.
I thought, number 3, I thought, wasn't that number 3 for the telepathy? Transmission?
Yeah, I'd say 1.
So it's a subaudible tone that activates a receiver audio output when present.
I just don't read that fast, that's all.
Yeah,
Hey, go
that's
back to
fine.
that just for a minute, Alex, go back just
Yeah,
for a
of
minute.
course.
Okay, very good.
So, the reason we typically use this is because if a repeater is listening all the time for a particular carrier, if it detects anything like a carrier, it'll come up and start retransmitting, even if it's just a small bit of noise that seemed to peak it, right? Using this particular subaudible tone means it has to listen for that tone as well.
Is that tone only, it's only a switch on during the beginning?
Yeah. So if you listen to a radio, it would essentially, you'd click on the microphone, so you'd hear the carrier, and then you'd hear like beep.
So the subaudible tone goes away after you.
Yeah, absolutely. But by the time you push down the button and are able to talk, your radio will then let your voice go through, and it won't be playing the tone. So, all right. Why should you pause briefly between transmissions when using a repeater?
Number 4.
Before listening for anyone. Yeah. So, unlike a conversation, you can't hear when someone wants to break in unless you actually listen for it. So, all right. Why should you keep transmission short when using a repeater?
Keep long distance charges down.
Oh man, my ham radio dealer. I mean, the long distance is killing me.
I'd say number 3.
Number 3. Long transmissions pay for somebody with an emergency for using a repeater. Yeah. Yeah. Too bad long hams don't get long distance charges. There may be money in that. What is a proper way to break into a conversation on a repeater?
There's that, you said show, break.
Show break to show that you're eager to join the conversation.
I would,
Number
that's, no, I was just gonna say number 1.
So your call sign during a break between transmissions? Yep. Short, simple, and ensures you say your call sign when you start transmitting. So, what is the accepted way to ask someone their location when using a repeater?
4.
Number 2.
2.
Where are you?
Probably, yeah.
Where are you? Yeah, because again you're on a repeater,
Yeah, they
you're
don't want
using
those
voice
Q-
mode.
they don't want those
Don't
Q-
use
Yeah.
Q signals
Yeah.
by voice.
3, yeah.
So,
What was QTH?
What's your
that's
location?
what's your location.
Yeah.
But
Could we not use that?
no, so again, you shouldn't really use Q codes when you're speaking. You should only use them when you're doing a digital mode or CW.
CW, that's absolutely right.
They're used by guys on voice, but try not to. It's better not to.
Yeah. Alright, FM repeater operation on the 2-meter band uses one frequency for transmission and one for reception. They're giving you a lesson in the question. The difference in frequency between the transmission and receive frequency is normally number 2, 600 kilohertz. Yep, that's correct. For example, we have a positive offset of 600 kilohertz on ours. So, to make your call sign better understood when using voice transmission, what should you do?
Number 2?
Turn up your microphone gain?
No, sorry, number 3. I'm
Number
standard
3. Number 3.
Yeah.
International phonics.
Yep. Absolutely.
Phonetics.
Absolutely. They make each letter unambiguous.
Yeah.
So, all right, now we get to get into this. What is the standard international phonetic for the letter A?
Alpha.
All together. There we go. Alpha.
Apparently there's a movie now
Bravo.
using phonetics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's the name of it's in phonetics.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh.
Delta.
Delta, yeah. Echo.
Golf.
Golf.
Iran.
Item. India. Yeah. Lima. Papa.
Romeo.
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 Yeah, don't use radio. I know a couple of guys who do, and every time I hear it, it bugs me. So, all right. What is the correct way to call CQ when using voice?
Say CW 3 times, followed by this is,
Yep.
followed by call
Yeah.
sign, so 3 times.
That's correct. Yep. 3 by 3.
You do the QCs first and then the call signs later, or you do the call signs first, then the QCs?
So CQ's first, and then this is, and then call sign. So CQ, 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 this is VE3ZSH, VE3ZSH, Victor Echo 3 Zulu Sierra Hotel. That's typically the way to do it.
Yeah, okay.
So, How would you answer a voice CQ call?
Number 3.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So, no need to be fancy when you're returning somebody's call, so just get straight to the point. What is simplex operation?
It's one over one.
Transmitting one-way communications?
Oh no, number 2.
What does that receive on Sanford?
Yeah, there you go. So, one-way conversation isn't typically a simplex. That would be broadcast. But instead, transmitting on the same frequency is simplex. So, when should you use simplex operations instead of a repeater?
Number 2 sounds
3.
good.
2 or 3? 3, yeah. When signals are reliable between communicating parties without a repeater. So, a good choice if you have somebody you want to talk to for a while. If you're continuously on the repeater, other people can't jump into the repeater, so. Why should local amateur communications use VHF and UHF frequencies instead of HF frequencies? Yep. To minimize interference on HF bands capable of long-distance communications. If you're talking to somebody a couple blocks over or in the same city, HF is overkill in terms of how far you need to reach.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the longer the signal travels, the more who will have to hear it, right? Why should we be careful in choosing a simplex frequency when operating VHF and UHF FM?
I would say number 3.
Number 3, you may inadvertently choose a channel that is an input to a local repeater. That's correct. Yeah. So, this is one of those ones, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Technically, they don't say that you might be, I guess number 4, interference may cause unlicensed devices operating in the same band. That's what I would assume, but it's the answer they're going for. Because again, on VHF and UHF are not primary holders. But that's another reason though, local repeater may be listening, so. If you're talking to a station using a repeater, how would you find out if you could communicate using simplex instead?
Can you define what simplex is?
Simplex is again not going through the repeater, but instead talking directly on a dedicated channel. So.
Radio to radio.
Yeah.
No repeater.
Simplistic.
That's what they're called simplexes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
See if you can clearly hear the station on the repeater's input
Number
frequency.
3, yeah.
That's correct. So pretty much every radio, I don't think there are ones that don't, but you can press a single button and it'll flip the frequency so you can listen on the input to the repeater and see if you can hear the person.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, more for long conversations. So if you're having a long conversation with somebody, try to move to a simplex frequency off a repeater. If you're operating simplex on a repeater frequency, why would it be a good amateur practice to change to another frequency? There are more repeater operators than simplex operators.
Why would I want to? Let me read that again.
Yeah, of course.
If you were
Number 2.
simplex. Well, why we wouldn't be changing that?
You're changing the...
We wouldn't be doing anything to the repeater.
No, you would not definitely change the frequency.
So changing the repeater's frequency is not practical. I
Yeah.
mean, you'd have to like talk to a committee to get the repeater frequency. Just go to a simple frequency. Yeah, what a bizarre set of answers. So, which sideband is commonly used on 3.755 megahertz for phone
Number
operations?
4.
Number 4, upper sideband, or sorry, lower sideband.
Yep.
That's correct. Yep. So the convention is to use lower sidebands on everything below 20 meters. So that would be the 160 meter, 80 meter, and 40 meter bands, and then upper sideband on 20, 15, and 10. So, and again, this is a convention. You can use the other one on it, but nobody's probably listening to that particular sideband. So, What should you do before you transmit on any frequency?
I'd say number 2.
Listen to make sure others are not using the same frequency?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Listen before you speak. It's almost philosophical in a sense. So,
Also, more friends.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I should read you that thing. Should I read that thing about Mark Twain?
True.
I found this in here. You know, I highlighted it. I found it hilarious. It said the American humorist Mark Twain. He said that it's better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and confirm what everybody has been thinking.
Yep, absolutely.
That's in the book. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, always listen before you go to speak on a repeater. So, in fact, most of the hobby is listening, not so much speaking. Here comes a long one. If you are the net control station of a daily HF net, what should you do if the frequency on which you normally meet is in use just before the net begins?
Number 3?
Number 3.
I'd say that too.
Okay.
That's
Call
a lot
and
of
ask the occupants to relinquish the frequency for the scheduled net operation, but if they are not agreeable, conduct the net on a frequency 3 to 5 kilohertz away from the regular net frequency. That's correct. So, cancel the net for the day, pretty silly. Alright, well, they're on the frequency and they say no, so increase your power. Never try to do that. Never get into a power war. It's silly. It's not going to work. So, yep. Though most people on the amateur radio, if you tell them, hey, there's a net that happens here, they'll be like, oh, well, we'll jump in and say hi, but we'll probably move, 3 kilohertz down or something like that, and they'll go have their conversation elsewhere. If a net is about to begin on a frequency, which you and another station are using, what should you do? It's like hand in hand with the last question.
Participate?
Yeah, that's the best way.
3 again.
I'd say number 3, yeah.
Yeah, as a courtesy to the net, move to a different frequency. Yeah, exactly. It's not rocket science. If propagation changes during your contact and you notice increasing interference from other activity on the same frequency, what should you do?
We're having a lot of fun with 3 today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move your contact to another frequency? Yep. Courtesy is a big part of the radio, so pretty much that and emergency communications.
Courtesy.
When selecting a single sideband phone transmitting frequency, what minimum frequency separation from a contact in progress should you allow between suppressed carriers to minimize interference?
Number 4.
I closed the book on this one.
Uh-oh.
I thought, who the dickens wants to have a phone contact?
They're called phone contacts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime you're using voice operation, it's called phone. So,
Is that what they call
Single
phone?
sideband's considered phone, yeah.
yeah.
Because I was looking in the old handbook, and they actually have a phone. You know, like the receiver and the speech, and you actually click off and on.
I actually have some of those installed in elevators as a phone.
Yeah,
They're actually phones.
that's
Okay.
what I
But
thought.
you got your
they meant by
talk
phone.
button. You pick it up and you got to push the stupid thing.
It's
So
hilarious.
here,
I like it.
whatever speech is, the classification is phone.
Yes. Yes, we
Really?
call it phone. So,
Oh,
alright, so
Same
answer
as- they're 3 kilohertz.
4, approximately 6 kilohertz?
I'm wrong.
That's fine. So it's only 3, and the main reason is because the bandwidth required for single sideband is 3 kilohertz. So if you have 1.5 kilohertz on either side of your carrier, and the other station has 1.5 kilohertz on either side of their carrier,
An overlap.
that gives 3 kilohertz in between, which is the space that needed for a full thing. So yeah. So the more is better, of course. 3 kilohertz is roughly the bandwidth of a single sideband transmission. Therefore, you need 1.5 kilohertz either side of you. They make 1.5 kilohertz either side of them, and you have 3 kilohertz in between. So, what is the correct way to call CQ when using Morse code? You no longer have to know Morse code. You just need to know all about Morse code.
That's weird, eh?
Number 2.
Number 2, send the letter CQ 3 times, followed by a DE, followed by your call sign, sent 3 times. That's correct. So exactly the same as phone, except for the DE part. I love to think of it as D's E's, as in this is, but
Skip that back again for me, Alex. Send the QC 3 times, followed by DE, followed by your call sign, sent 3 times.
Yeah. So, how should you answer a routine Morse code CQ call?
Number 3.
Number 3. Send your call sign followed by your name, station location, and signal report.
Don't like that one?
Probably a little simpler.
Number 4 then.
I thought you were supposed to send it 3 times as well, but
Yeah,
it
I
says
did too.
4. What is it? Twice?
So it's only twice.
Well, you've made
Yeah.
contact now, so now you're replying to that contact.
So it is number 4.
Yes.
So I thought it was 3 times.
So the reason
Twice.
you do it twice on CQ is because, again, you're having to listen to those dots and dashes. So the first time they hear it, they'll be just trying to sync up with what exactly you're sending. Then they'll hear their call sign, they'll hear that this is, and then they'll have 2 attempts to try to pick out your call sign.
Okay.
So, at what speed should Morse code CQ call be transmitted?
5 words per minute?
Well, there isn't 5 words per minute. I guess any speed below 5 words per minute is close.
At
Yeah.
any speed you can reliably receive.
Yep. Any speed which you can reliably receive.
You'll-
Though,
Most people can transmit faster than they can receive, like when you get going. So if you start going too fast, then the guy you're sending to say, "Oh, good, he's going faster. He'll go faster," and you're going, "Aye,
yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah, so because again, as Steve says, you'll be able to send much faster than you can receive, right? You'll remember that like H is da 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 da, right? And you'll be able to move through it really quick, but then you'll hear it come back and you'll be like, yeesh. So also slower means that people who don't feel like they can listen to that can actually talk back to you. And then if you feel like you can go faster, you go a little bit faster, they go faster, you can go as fast as you need. Alright, what is the meaning of the procedural signal CQ?
Calling any station.
Calling any station, pretty straightforward. What is the meaning of the procedural signal DE? I still prefer this is.
They're saying from?
From? Yeah.
From.
So, yeah, I still prefer D's, E's. What is the meaning of the procedural signal K?
End of the message, isn't it?
Any station please reply.
That's correct, yep. Okay, or if you know the Morse code, it's dash dot dash, which is kind of like go ahead. But, yeah. What is meant by the term DX?
Distant station.
Distant station, yeah, straight on the money. What is the meaning of the term 7-3?
Have a nice day.
Best regards.
Yeah.
Best regards. Okay, so a lot of people like to say how you're supposed to say that particular phrase. Don't jump on that bandwagon. It's way too easy to say, oh no, you're supposed to say it 7-3 and never 7-3s or 73s or 7-3 or 73. Don't do it. So, alright. When selecting a CW transmitting frequency, what minimum frequency separation from a contact in progress should you allow to minimize interference? There we go.
Number 3.
Number 3.
3 or 6. Number 4.
So it's CW. Really, really low bandwidth, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the easy way to guess this question out. It's down to the hertz range.
Yeah.
Though the 5 to 50 hertz is too small. 150 hertz is what I've heard the bandwidth of CW is, but it all depends on how much power they're putting behind it and if they're flying off the ends. Bandwidth is one of those topics you really get into in the advanced, but for our purposes you just sort of memorize numbers. Good Morse telegraphy operators. I like 3 and 4.
I'd say number 1.
Number 1, listen to the frequency to make sure that it's not in use before transmitting. Same thing everybody else does in ham radio. Alright, when may you use your amateur station to transmit an SOS or Mayday?
Number 2.
Number 2, never.
That's not true. What are the other choices?
Number 1.
Only at specified times. Life-threatening distress situations. Alright. If you are in contact with another station and you hear an emergency call for help on your frequency, what should you do?
Number 1.
Number 1.
Yep. If they're in general distress, ask them how you can assist. Right? They may say, you know, call 911, or, you know, I don't know. You listen to what they're saying and see how you can help them out.
You wouldn't be giving them
CPR?
I say, how much power you got in this thing? Do I need a heart tank?
What is the proper distress call to use when operating phone?
Operating phone.
Wait a minute. What's the proper distress? What's distress?
Emergency.
Just a straight, like a severe emergency?
Mm-hmm.
3.
3 emergency?
Maybe 1.
One Mayday.
It's Mayday.
It depends on when the emergency. That's why I asked what the emergency.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah.
Of course. All right, so I don't know why I left this in there, but I'm going to go over it anyway. There's 3 different ways we can
Yeah, I saw
use
that.
emergencies. We have Mayday, pan, and repeat. Mayday is, I have an emergency, help. Pan is more of an aviation thing. It's an urgent signal. There's something very wrong, but it's not a full-out emergency yet. We don't really use that in amateur radio too much, but you may hear somebody use it if they do a lot of different radio communication modes. And then repeat. Some people like to really get on either your case if they've ever done time in the military. Repeat is typically to repeat a military operate, like bombing or airstrike. So say again is just kind of what we say more.
I thought there was something else.
There's also SOS, but that's
What
for...
about, I thought there was the word emergency or something there somewhere.
I thought Mayday was pertaining to boating. You know?
Not
Oh,
particularly.
Navigation.
So we use it in aviation as well, Mayday.
They use it in everything, I think, except for aviation, you'll use pan more often than Mayday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. To give you an example of a classic difference between Mayday and pan. Mayday is the engines are gone, we're crash landing, everything is lost. Pan would be like, the engine is giving out multiple times, we need to come in for an emergency landing, right? So they would give you clear access to the field, and immediately everybody else has to clear out for you. So it's not a full emergency, but there's a big problem.
The third one I think you were thinking of is security.
Oh, security.
Security?
Yeah, at 12:34, 12:35 in the
Yeah.
book.
Do you want to just read the description for it?
This is the lowest level of emergency, is used primarily for warnings and aids in navigation and weather warnings. The expression is security, pronounced sécurité. This is repeated 3 times. Sécurité is rarely used except in maritime situations.
Okay.
That's
I
where
saw
your
it
voting
there
comes from.
somewhere.
So-
Yeah. I know I read it in here somewhere.
So, and I guess that would probably be if there's a major storm coming in. We'd probably
It
do
comes,
that sort of thing.
it comes apart when you read this book so much. It all
Someone's
becomes,
ringing the doorbell.
Oh, probably Sabrina.
Probably your
With the power cable?
better out.
yeah, it all becomes gibberish. Like, you know, you get too much information. You gotta,
Gotta go through that.
Never too
usually
much
with discourse.
you gotta put it away. You gotta put it away.
I know.
My wife says I was talking in my sleep again last night.
Okay, so, back to this though, I guess. What is the proper distress call when you use operating CW?
That's SOS.
SOS, yeah.
Yeah.
Straightforward. Yep, SOS like any other thing, it's a CW thing. Don't say SOS over the radio, but in an emergency, say whatever you need to get help. So,
Well, how did the words CW come along? I mean, I can see Morse code. I don't see the
Continuous wave.
correlation.
Continuous wave.
Continuous wave. Is that what it is?
It's continuous wave. You just turn it on and off.
Yeah, when you're breaking the signal.
You're continuous in wave.
Yeah,
It's either on or it's off.
that's right. That's how you transmit it.
Yeah, but it's a continuous wave.
Yeah.
so-
Okay. So you turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. Continuous
Sorry.
wave.
sorry about that. Back on. Alright, so, what is the proper way to interrupt a repeater conversation to signal a distress call?
What is the propagation of the computer conversation to signal distress call?
Number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1. Yep, break it immediately following the transmission of an active party and state your situation and call sign. But the long and the short of it is there are very few rules in an emergency.
One of the questions on the exam is, are you allowed to interrupt? And then it gives you a bunch of things, and the answer is never.
Really?
Never interrupt. You have
Oh,
to
an emergency?
wait. Doesn't matter, you have to wait.
Okay.
That's why they said, wait till the end.
Yeah, wait till the break in the conversation.
But that was one of the questions, and the answer was never.
Okay. Alright. So, yeah, but never interrupt, yeah. If you were communicating with another amateur station and hear a station in distress break in, what should you do? 2, immediately cease all transmission because the stations just have emergency rates frequency.
Number
So,
3.
number 3.
That's all.
So if we break it down, A, ignore it. B, ignore it. C, do something. And D, ignore it. So,
Drop back to the I just want to see how it looks. Okay. Oh.
Yeah, you could argue with that. You could argue with that.
unfortunately, that's the answer. So,
Yeah.
you can argue with it to get them.
I wanted to see what it looked like.
Alright, in order of priority, a distress message comes before. This is a funny one, the way they worded it. So it's an emergency message. The currently accepted level of emergency and responses are distress, urgency, security. So emergency is what they're kind of talking about in terms of an urgency message.
Security's in the boat.
Yeah. So this is one of those questions that really they're messing with you.
Tricking
Exactly.
words around here.
Okay. If you hear distress traffic and are unable to render assistance, you should enter the details in the logbook and take no further action.
Well, I hope that turns out well.
We'll check back in a few weeks.
Ah, yeah. And number 2, I guess, would be the
2, I
best one.
guess. 2 or 3. Okay.
So contact the authorities and then maintain a watch until until certain assistance will be forthcoming. Listen, but it's close enough to watch, I guess. All right. What is a QSL card? Now the rough emergencies.
It's number 3.
Number 3, written proof of communication between two amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. Proof, but I mean they're more fun to collect. So.
You passed.
So, definitely would encourage people, create a QSL card. It takes a couple hours on an evening sometime, but they're really fun to be able to exchange with people, so.
They more or less tell you what questions they're going to ask on the exam. If you do your studying, most of the Q's they're going to use are QSO, QRU, QTC, QSB.
What is an azimuthal map?
Hmm?
Oh, no, what is an azimuthal map? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, am I interrupting?
No.
QSB, QRO, QRS, QRM, and QRN. That seems to be the basic ones they use all the time.
Was QRZ in there as well?
QRA is the name of your station. QRP is decrease your transmitter. But I don't see QRZ. Did you say?
Yeah.
It's your location.
I think that's at the very end of the list from the textbook. That's my textbook, yeah.
If you check on the website, I've now updated the Q section to include just the list of examined ones.
Q.
So you can study just the 10 of them, I think there is, as opposed to the 26. So,
QRZ. Did you say?
QRZ.
That's who's calling you.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see it in there, so I didn't highlight it.
Number 3 when you get to it.
Number
Yeah,
3,
it's
path
in-
projection
Oh,
centered on a
yes,
particular
yes,
location.
yes, right.
Use to determine the shortest path between points on the Earth's surface. That's correct.
You've been doing your homework, eh?
Yeah.
Every
So,
day.
for anybody who's into astronomy, you probably remember azimuth being along the northern line, how vertically you go up until you meet a celestial object. Yeah. It refers more in this particular case to it drawn head-on, so that every single path you draw is a straight line along a great circle route. If you've ever seen a map of Antarctica, this is the type you're looking at. It's a circle, and as it gets toward the edges, it looks really weird and distorted. But that's because, again, you're having to display a 3D object in a 2D space. So, But
Is that actually gonna be on the test?
this question, absolutely. There's a couple of them on it.
Is it?
So, what is the most useful type of map when used in to use when orientating a directional HF antenna towards a distant station?
Obviously, number 2.
It's the azimuthal. Yeah. This is because straight lines on an azimuthal map constitute great circle routes.
HF.
High frequency.
What are we using for an antenna? That 130-foot long thing that we're going to rotate?
You mean that?
Well, I mean, when they're talking HF, they're probably talking 20 meters, 10 meters, that sort of range.
Gee,
Could
something
you
matters.
if you can communicate HF on a long wire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were talking about like Yagis, or
Yeah.
40 meters and down Yagis.
Yeah.
Or up, I guess, not down up.
A 40-meter Yagi would still be a really big
They're
Yagi.
available, yeah. The
So-
HVS, they have a 40-meter add-on. A lot of them have a 40-meter add-on.
Oh,
kit
okay.
That you can buy for them. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be a lot. That'd be a lot to turn though.
Oh
wouldn't
yeah. Oh yeah.
it? You need a strong rotor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Wouldn't
tower.
wouldn't you want to be doing some kind of electrical rotating system?
Well,
Rather
you can use there's some heavy-duty rotors for that. But if you get any bigger, then you use there's guys that use rotate the whole towers and everything. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff out there.
Yeah, tower rotation seems to be the popular when you get the big.
Big bucks.
Yep.
Yeah, you need a nice sized solid shaft in the middle of that tower to keep it balanced.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Directional antenna pointed in the long path direction to another station is generally oriented how many degrees from its short path heading?
180.
180, straight on the money. Yeah. They're talking about long path as in taking the long path around the Earth to get to a station. Yeah. Well. What method is used by radio amateurs to provide written proof of communication between two amateur stations?
Number 2.
Signed postcard listing contact date, time, frequency, mode, and power, called a QSL card. Yep. They're not mandatory, but again, it's really cool if you can send one and trade them between people. So you can start building up cool collections. Oh, they make you a cool kid. So. You hear other local stations talking to radio amateurs in New Zealand, but you don't hear those stations when your beam is aimed to the normal compass bearing to New Zealand. What should you try?
To beam 180 degrees away from that bearing and listen to the station arriving on a long path. That's a long sentence.
Yeah. Longest sentence usually wins in these questions, especially if it's that much longer. But yeah, point your antenna towards Newington, Connecticut. I don't. Just anywhere you are on Earth, just point it there. Oh, it's just magic. I don't know if you've done this, Steve.
I don't have a beam, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, a bunch of the other instructors are away tonight due to various reasons, so I was wondering if they would. But moving on.
I use a TV antenna, and it's the same thing with that.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, if you can't get pointed at Toronto, you point it at Peterborough. Yeah.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, it comes off the back end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which statement about recording all contacts and unanswered QSL calls in a station logbook or computer log is not correct?
Number 2.
A logbook is required by Industry Canada. Yeah. So a logbook is important for handling neighbor interference complaints. A logbook is important for recording contacts for operating awards. So if you're trying to get all provinces worked, all states worked, all countries or something like that. And a World Cup log preserves your fondest amateur radio memories for years. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, in Canada we are not required to have a logbook. So, what would you say? Good, bad,
Well,
neutral?
most guys use it now. The electronic logging, there's so many programs out there. There's some there's freebies, and there's some really cheap ones that you can use, and it's great. And it records everything for contests and for rewards. And
I got
so most guys keep some. There's a few old timers that
Are
still
they-
keep the old written log, but
You got are these auto filled in or manual filled in?
well, you just something like if you. I'll show you how on a break, but you can on mine I use you can you put the call sign in, and with if you got the QRZ, and boom, it automatically fills in this information, and you just got to tab it through the bands and what band, mode, power, the times
So basically
automatically.
you're filling in a manual.
So it's semi-automatic, yeah.
Semi-auto.
It's pretty quick. Like even in the contest one, there's some that are designed for contesting, so it's even quicker. At the end of the contest, they print the Cabral format and send it to the organization running the contest. But you know, you used to have to keep a log years ago, but now you don't. And,
Yeah, I have my father-in-law's old written.
There's still a lot of old timers
Yeah,
still
it's,
use it.
Okay.
The fellow out
Like
west
books-
showed me,
books-
he had
books.
a log in
Oh, wow.
the
Yeah,
phone
and every once in a while, there'd
So
be
you
a
get phone
personal
patching
note
in
in
there.
it.
Yeah,
somewhere.
but it's, you know, you wanna look
Oh, like
back,
somebody he
if-
knew,
if
or-
you talk to
Well,
someone,
there'd be
you know,
something
if
that
you're
happened
doing
in his
awards and
life,
stuff, they're a great way to do
family
that.
event or something, and he'd make little notes on that too. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, very cool. Alrighty, so moving along. Station logs and confirmation QSL cards are always kept in UTC, Universal Time Coordinated. Where is that time based?
It's over in Greenwich.
Greenwich, England.
Sandwich, England, yeah.
Yep. Don't use GMT though. GMT has daylight savings time in it, so always use UTC. If you're given both, when they're talking GMT, they're talking about actual Greenwich Meridian time and not the one that doesn't actually shift. So.
So, this is where I was gonna ask you the question about that Fleming guy. Was he responsible for daylight savings?
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Or was it, that bonehead from Great Britain and he wanted more daylight because of the,
I don't know for sure.
Get rid of it.
The long and the short of
Yeah.
it is, yeah, it absolutely did not do. Its original aim was to preserve the amount of energy we used during the war. It doesn't. It actually increases energy consumption by 10%, and there's many more accidents and like injuries following the week after daylight savings time shifts.
I
So,
thought, you know, there's a program going around on British Columbia right now, they're taking a vote about having to do away with the change in time.
yeah,
And
Didn't Russia get rid of their daylight savings?
if you,
there's a couple of places.
if
Yeah,
you go to the
Saskatchewan
airport,
doesn't use it, I don't think either.
Saskatchewan.
no, Saskatchewan doesn't change, no, you're right.
Okay.
If you go to the airport,
Mhm.
or the train station, or any other government agency, or aircraft transportation mode,
Mhm.
train, they're all on standard time. That's why they say be there 2 or 3 hours early. Because the suckers are all on standard time.
Just wanna let me know before break and I'll go make some coffee.
Yeah, of course.
Every time you think you wanna have break, just let me know a couple
Well,
minutes.
it should be coming up real soon because we're already at 7 o'clock.
Can we go
So,
make some now?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll just start moving through these. We should probably get through them real quick.
Okay.
To set your station clock accurately to UTC, you should receive the most accurate time off the air from
Number 2.
number 2, CHU. That was quick. Okay, yeah. Use your computer. Don't
Make it complicated.
exactly. Your computer is already at the most accurate possible time imaginable because they have to be. Same with your cell phone for things like GPS or logging into remote servers and stuff.
Not my cell phone.
Not your cell phone?
My work cell phone's always off.
Oh, okay.
I
Don't
don't
use
know
your.
why. I don't know why. I can compare it to my own phone and it's off.
Wow.
I think United Technologies sets the time.
Oh, that could be it. And then their central time server is way off, probably.
Well, I got a
Central Time
feeling. I got a
Server-
feeling they're sneaking a few extra minutes out of us here and there.
Who's Ottawa set by? Central Time?
Ottawa?
Yeah, because they CDC proclaims international time at 1300 hours at 1 p.m. at the beat.
Hmm.
Is that so? That's being set at
Well, it should be, I guess.
international time set.
I'm not 100% up on who
Well,
sets which times
CHU
where.
and the CHU and WWW, WWV, and I don't know who controls them. I guess they're atomically controlled and supposed to be accurate within a second every
What's
100
the
years or something.
Yeah.
Ministry of Environment that controls both of them?
Yeah.
And they're both technically running on atomic clocks, ones that have like cesium atoms that reinforce the loop. But
There was an article in
Yeah.
the Star about that the other day because of the leap year.
oh yeah,
They had to make a computer an adjustment.
well it would probably would have been the
Made
leap
years
second.
ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, let's try to keep moving on. Which list of emanation type is which list of emanation types is in order from the narrowest bandwidth to the widest bandwidth? At least they all start CW essentially. So
Oh, I read this and I hated it. It's number 3 FM. It's got that radio in it. SS sideband.
So if we remember, CW is always the narrowest.
Yeah.
A single sideband is half of an FM signal, so it's obviously going to be below FM. So if we know that, these three are in, and then this one can't be, or this one could be, this one can't be. So we're left with either of these two, and then RTTY is quite small, so it's down on that end.
I struggled with that. I went back and read that twice.
Yeah, and then slow scan, and then fast scan, and any other mode you can stick in there, but those are the ones they have. Alright, FM receivers perform an unusual manner. Yeah. FM receivers perform in an unusual manner when two or more stations are present. The loudest signal, even though it's only 2 or 3 times as strong, 2 or 3 times as stronger than the other signals. Sick. That's theirs. Will be the only transmission demodulated. This is called
Capture effect.
capture effect. Yep. Weird when it happens. And interestingly, it actually did happen when we were up near to the repeater. Both Bob, the other instructor here, and Jeffrey, they both transmitted at the same time, but I was only able to hear Jeffrey's through the repeaters, so, and Bob didn't retransmit, so we never knew that he actually transmitted, so.
So Bob, or Jeffrey was the stronger?
He was the stronger one coming in, yeah. So, and again, the other person will be entirely non-existent. It won't sound like one is stopping on the other, it will just be one person clear as day and you won't hear the other person. So, it's quite interesting. So, what does connected mean in AX.25 packet link radio link? Oh my gosh. Why do they ask you this stuff?
Tell me it's not on the exam.
This is on the exam.
Yeah, it is.
They're also going to ask you about AmTor as well.
I struggled with this one too, but I think 4 was the answer.
4. Transmitting station is
That's
sending
4.
data. Yep. Only one sending data to only one receiving station. It replies that the data is being correctly received. Yeah. So connected refers to the bidirectional link that's been established. The first person is sent to the second person is sent back a connected message, because when the first person receives that, then they know that they're both connected and they can hear each other. So, alright. What does monitoring mean in packet radio frequency?
I got this one wrong.
So what's the right answer? Industry Canada is monitoring all messages.
Industry.
Number 2.
Number 2
is the right
yeah.
answer.
Receiving station is displaying messages that may be sent it, and yep. So, common sense, monitoring just kind of means you're listening to everything.
Yeah, that's why I got it wrong. I didn't read the monitoring word.
Oh, okay.
That's the Q thing on this exam. You gotta read everything.
Read the words, see what they're actually saying.
Yep. Yep.
Take your time.
Especially because they'll toss one word in like not, and then you're like, oh, it's A.
I've done that a few times too.
Me too, don't worry. What is a digipeater?
Digital repeater.
Which one of those best describes that?
It's full of those electronic parts.
Sorry, what's the word? No, no.
I was gonna say number 3.
Station that retransmits any data that it receives.
Oh, hold on. Ah!
Okay.
So, in digital modes, you can say whether or not you want it to be repeated,
Oh.
and a good digipeater will respect that. So, yep, you can mark whether or not to retransmit your traffic. What does network mean in packet radio? Same thing it means in anything, but, alright.
Terminal node controller. We were just talking about this, weren't we?
Basically,
The terminal node controller.
which one? This one?
Number 2?
2?
2 or 4? That was 3.
So it's just a way of connecting packet radio stations so that data can be sent over long distances. So,
And you
Same
can
thing.
volunteer to do that, eh?
you can volunteer the use of your radio and repeater system to be able to digipeat for networks.
And you set it up and it's automatic, it just does it.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. Kind of. I mean, you have to follow tutorials and make sure you have all the equipment correctly configured, but basically. Okay, an AX.25 packet radio operation. What equipment connects the terminal node controller? Connects to a terminal node controller. We had this question before.
Okay. That's brewing there. Okay. Excuse me.
Number 4.
Number 4, transceiver to modem. I think this was the main answer everybody gave last time as well.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Is that not, I thought it was.
Number 3. Yeah. So, the first one, the transceiver and the modem seems right, but it's the GPS system in there that's possible that you have to make sure. So, we've seen this one before last week. So, how would you modulate a 2-meter FM transceiver to produce packet radio emanations?
Did I tell you I didn't like these questions?
With the terminal node controller?
Oh, yeah.
Connect the keyboard to the transceiver's microphone input.
Mm,
Click,
Number 3, number 2, sorry. Number two, yeah. I'm not seeing the little dots in time, eh?
Ah, it's fine. Yeah, so it's connected to the microphone input. So it produces audio output, the TNC does, and that goes through your radio and becomes a radio signal. So, when selecting an RTTY transmitting frequency, what minimum frequency separation from a contact in progress should you allow, center to center, to minimize interference?
3 gigahertz.
250 to 500?
Or 4.
250 to 500. So remember, separate by bandwidth needed. RTTY typically has around 500, so you should do 250 to 500. Digital transmissions use signals called blank to transmit the status 1 and 0. Forgot to put in the blank here. There's a small space.
Market space.
Which what?
Market space.
Market space. Oh, there's the blank. Okay. Yep, market space. I don't like that they call it market space. It's like how it's modulating it, but that's way beyond what we need to know, so market space it is. Which of the following terms does not apply to packet?
Number 2.
Number 1.
Bauda. Yep, that's RTTY.
Oh, yeah.
Bauda code again, it's more of an RTTY thing than a packet thing. So, when using Amtor transmissions, oh man, there are 2 modes that may be utilized. Mode A uses automatic retransmit requests, ARQ protocol, and is normally used for...
Yeah.
Why are they asking you this sort of stuff?
I don't know.
I guess technically you could use mode B by accident and not know which one is which, but I think you would Google how to use Amtor before you just blindly started going.
Number 3, no, number 4, sorry.
Number
I'll
4?
guess 1.
Guess 1? 1 is correct. Yep. So mode A is for using normal communication once you've established contact. Mode B is to pick up new people. Yeah, just know that B is used to establish, A is used to converse. That's why they're asking it, I don't know. What is RST signal? What are RST signal reports? Seems like we're slowly moving to the Q code section. Then we'll be able to get to domains.
A short way to describe signal reception.
Yep. Short way to describe signal reception. What does RST mean in a signal report?
Strength and tone. Number
Strength.
3.
That one? Yep. That's what RST is. What is the meaning of your signal report is 5.7?
That's almost good.
Number 2.
Number 2, your signal is perfectly readable with near pure tone.
No,
Number 4.
Oh,
So-
Jeffrey, you waited.
So yeah, if you remember, as we give the numbers, we do readability.
Yeah, I haven't
Strength.
memorized them yet.
Yeah, readability, modulability, and strength.
So, yep, there we go. So, and again, 1 to 5, 1 to 9, 1 to 9.
That much
So-
I knew.
Okay,
But I
perfect.
can't remember which they are.
It's
Except
RST.
the 9's really good.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, if you ever see a 9, then you're like, perfect. But, what is the meaning of you are 5'9 plus 20 dB?
So your signal's great.
Very great.
Yeah.
Plus 20 dB over S9.
That's it.
Yep, that's correct. A distance station asks for a signal report on a local repeater you monitor. What facts affect your assessment?
Number 4.
The other operator needs to know how well he is received on the repeater, not how well you receive the repeater.
Yep.
That's correct. Yeah. Signal reports on a repeater tend to be more anecdotal than like your 577 or something like that. So typically you hear phrases like full quieting the repeater, or sounds great, or solid copy, or like it's noisy.
I want you to know I wait for the long answer.
It's a good choice. I'll probably get you an additional 10%. So if you're blindly guessing, you get 25% of the questions, and then if you go for the long answer, you get like 35%. So, all right.
I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna get 95.
What What does RST 459 mean in Morse code contact?
I'd say number 4.
Number 4,
Like, can I
your
just
signal
guess
is quite readable, fair strength with perfect tone.
Oh, I went with readable, very strong.
Because 9 is the highest.
Yeah.
So, enough of that. Let's review Q codes and then we'll go grab a break. So let's try to go quick as possible. What is the meaning of the Q signal RST or QRS? Reading things
Say
that aren't
more
there.
slowly.
More slowly. Yep. What is one meaning of the Q signal QTH?
My
Number
electrician
1.
is.
What is the proper Q signal to use if you see a frequency in use before transmitting on CW?
QR. Is it in use?
QRU?
Wait a minute. To see if it's in use. Oh yeah. QRL.
QRL. What is one meaning of the Q signal QSY?
Change frequency.
What is the meaning of the Q signal QSB?
Your signal's fading.
What is the proper Q signal to use to ask if someone is calling you on CW?
That's probably the signal. Ask if someone-
USL.
Oh, Q or Z.
Yep.
Where is he?
Where is that? The signal QRM signifies.
Man-made noise.
Which one of those is it?
Yeah, you're being interfered with transmission. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm being interfered with. The Q signal QRN means
Natural noise.
static. Yep.
That's it, static, yeah.
The Q signal indicating that you want the other station to send send slower is
QRM? QRS.
QRS. Yeah. Who is calling me is denoted by the Q signal.
QRK.
Z.
Z. Oh, shit.
Where are you? Who am I?
Yeah.
The Q signal which signifies I will call you again is
QRX.
QRX. Coffee break. All right.
You're doing
Coffee's
good.
ready too.
I didn't do any of that.
That's why I do the tests.
Yeah, you do it by memory, and I
I do
do
it in a book. I'm doing
Yeah.
it from the, you do the exam, the real exam, and you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Yeah, in Morocco.
Nice down there, right?
Yeah.
20,000 Americans with them.
Wow. All right. So yeah. What about a transmit power? Should radio amateurs use it all the time? The minimum legal necessary to communicate. Sorry. Yes.
Can you answer this? With all of these rules and things that you're supposed to do when you're on the air, is there a governing body that says you're doing it wrong? What happens if you do it wrong?
So there is. Industry Canada takes care of that. In recent years, some people like to say they've been getting lax. They don't typically crack down as hard as fast on people if you're doing things wrong. But if you are doing things wrong, there are fines they can impose. The maximum allowable fine, I'm pretty sure, is $5,000 and 1 year in prison for doing things seriously wrong. But again, that's the maximum, like, you're specifically like doing mayday distress signals, that sort of stuff. But yes, if somebody wants to complain, for example, about you as an amateur radio operator, because you're using your call sign, they can report you to Industry Canada and say.
It doesn't mean that they sit there and listen to everything or watch everything you're doing.
No.
I'm sure they will if they're complained about
Yeah.
though.
If you get...
They used to have station wagons, used to drive around for that.
Really?
But now we kind of self-regulate it as hams.
Yeah.
Like if you got a guy who's on there and you know he's interfering, like the hams will go out to get their radio directional finding and going out, pinpoint where he is. They go to Industry Canada with a complete report. Then they'll come out, they'll wait for him to interfere. Then they'll go knock on the door and say, hey. But yeah, we do a lot of our own kind of, you know. It's supposed to be like a friendly hobby, gentleman's hobby, nice, everyone get along, so we don't want to interfere with everybody, right?
I
Ladies
just think
hobby
that
too.
there are a lot of rules.
Have you ever had to do that?
Sorry?
Have you ever had to do that?
Come close a couple times along the phone in Industry Canada.
I know one of the classic ways that people get busted all the time is profanity on the air. It's strictly not tolerated.
Oh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
We've had instances in Durham, and usually it's late at night, and sometimes it involves alcohol, where guys are on there and they're cursing. I mean, and racial slurs and everything. And I mean, and I won't say who, but it wasn't North Shore. There was a repeater, and the president of the club got a call from Minister of Canada because someone complained, and they said, well, we've heard this, we've got a complaint. If it's true, you better stop it. And they read the riot act to everybody.
Can you imagine how devastating that would be if our club, North Shore Club, got a call about me saying bad things? The whole club bears that weight.
Absolutely.
But that's why the repeater coordinator, chair, or the call sign guy, he's the one that sort of, he's on the hook for it. That's why with our repeater, a little bit of shut it down. They hear someone on, a little bit of shut it down remotely, boom, you're out there.
Good stuff.
You know, see.
So
It doesn't happen too often, but.
no, exactly. But yeah, no, similar story flying. It's pretty common if you end up goofing up pretty bad when you're coming into land, you'll accidentally hold down the mic while you're screaming and going ah. There are plenty of instances of people I know, even friends when I was on course, who got pretty hefty fines, typically around $1,000 for profanity on the air.
Really?
So yeah, do not, because the other thing is it, especially for flying, because you're in direct communication with the control tower, and they're constantly filling out reports and stuff like that, it's nothing for them to say, you know, profanity to this person, this aircraft, this time, and yeah, so.
I guess life's at stake there, right? So they can't.
Exactly, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and again, it's always the fact of you never know who's listening. So, just
I
actually.
mean, mistakes happen. Sometimes you.
I took about
maybe
10
one
hours to
little word
fly
or-
one
Yeah,
time.
but if
But-
you,
Okay.
Didn't like the way I landed.
That's pretty much me too.
Scared the shit out of my instructor.
You know, that leads me to say you can say shit on the air now because it's spelled S-C-H-I-T-T. Yeah, that's a new word. It's in the New Webster's Dictionary.
All right. Moving on. Where in your station can you verify that legal power limits are respected?
Had the connection to the transmitter or amplifier.
Sounds pretty straightforward. So, what is the maximum transmitting output power an amateur station may use on 3.75 megahertz if the operator has a basic and Morse code qualification?
Oh,
1,000 watts. Number 2. I bet you that's not right.
Or one.
560.
160 watts. Peak envelope power.
So this specifically refers to the single sideband because it's a little bit different than all the other ones. Actually, Steve was kind enough. He went and talked to somebody.
Industry Canada examiner, or not examiner, officer, because there's been, it used to be 200, all they used to have on their thing was 250 watts input to the anode, and so what's that output? And then they've added this, they changed this and they added this recently, and you've talked to a lot of guys, well, can you run a linear, like in that book it says you can't have a linear amplifier. Well, technically you can, but it can't be, might come up on one of the questions, it can't be more than 3 dB, what you're allowed to run, which is 560 watts. 3 dB is 2 times 2, right? So you can't run more, you can't have hooked up to your radio more than 1100 watt capable linear amplifier, or you're breaking the rules.
Okay.
So you actually can run more power than 100 watts, but you know, it's, you gotta remember power isn't everything, you gotta have an antenna. You know,
Yeah, that's in the beginning of the book. Your best friend is a good antenna.
you gotta remember that, guys, yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to go,
That's
just
peak
go
envelope
by
power is at the end before like they talk about into the out of the amplifier.
Yes, out of the amplifier, which would constitute the end of the transmitter. Yeah. So the peak envelope power, what they're talking about is the maximum single peak voltage on the line. Or no, current on the line.
So the other one's an average, and that's a peak.
I saw this question on the.
So the PEP is a part of the average. The best thing I could say would be look up the Wikipedia page on peak envelope power if you really want to know the nitty-gritties. But
Oh, I was just trying to relate it. They talk about 2 different powers you're allowed to have.
Yeah, the input power
Input
and
power, that's what it was. Input power
to the
and
anode.
peak envelope power.
yes.
I didn't like that.
And one's substantially different than the other.
It is, yes.
Was peak envelope less?
Peak envelope is way more.
It's more.
Yes. Typically, peak envelope power, I believe, is.
Well, okay, so it's advanced that has the 1,000,
Yes.
2000 watts, yeah.
and it's even more. What did you say was 2,000?
I think it's 1000 input to the anode.
But then the other peak envelope is considerably
2000
higher.
something, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was reading.
I didn't really like that question because the basic license doesn't incorporate the Morse code.
The basic license.
You don't have to have that.
If you don't get 80%, then you need the Morse code to
Read
do
the
the
question.
other channels, that's all.
Basic and Morse code qualifications.
Yeah, but that only lets you do other,
You can do HF.
HF, that's all. It doesn't increase your power, it
No.
just lets you do HF.
But
Yeah.
basic with HF is the same with basic and Morse code. See, with Morse code, you get the HF. It used to be, you never had basic with honors. It used to be basic, Morse code, or advanced.
Yeah.
And to talk in HF, you needed basic and Morse code, and even advanced, you couldn't talk in HF if you didn't have Morse code.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So now they dropped the Morse code.
Yes.
Yes. So the Morse code has been moved into its own
still
special
do it.
qualification.
And you
So.
So on this question here, the maximum transmitting output power,
Mhm.
an amateur station may use a 3750 kilohertz. The operator has a basic license.
Mhm.
So if you pass and you have honors,
It doesn't matter.
That would be a different qualification.
would that be a different qualification?
It is, yes. So in Canada, we technically have 4 different qualifications. There's basic, basic with honors, Morse code, and advanced. So in this particular setup, the person has a basic and Morse code, right? Having both means they can operate on that high HF frequency,
Yes.
right? 3.75. And so that's the reason they had to include the Morse code in there, because they could either say they have basic with honors or that they have basic and Morse. But just basic couldn't do it.
Because you're
So
not-
basic and honors would be equal to basic and Morse code.
Yes.
Now I have it, now I have it. You're right, you know, that the wording is,
Well, that's,
It's
And you had to know that that was high frequency.
Yeah. Well, I
You
mean,
had, you know, if you didn't know that that 3750 was, if you weren't sure what band you were in,
Mhm.
you still have to be sure about that.
absolutely yes. Yeah. So, I mean, the reason they have that on there is, again, they don't have an answer on here that says person with basic and Morse code qualifications isn't allowed to operate on that. But if they had just put basic, then that would technically be the correct answer. So peak envelope power is equal to steady carrier power, or CW dash average power, in a properly formed CW transmission or any other transmission. PEP is also equal to the average power in a steady FM, FSK, or RTTY transmission. In single sideband, though, things get funny. Assuming linear, perfectly symmetrical 100 modulation of carrier, PEP, output of an AM transmission, is 4 times its carrier PEP. In other words, a typical modern 100-watt amateur radio transceiver is usually rated for no more than, and often less than, 25 watts carrier output when referring to AM. However, PEP bears no particular ratio or mathematical relationship to long-term average power in distorted envelopes. So, such as CW waveforms with overshoot, or in complex amplitude modulation waveforms, such as single sideband or AM voice. Typical average power of a single-side voice transmission, for example, is 10 to 20% of PEP. So the percentage of long-term average PEP increases with processing and commonly reaches up to 50% in extreme speech processing. That's,
I know, but I just don't understand it all.
yeah, PEP really gets complicated. You need to know more for the advanced, but even there, they're not 100% on exactly what's going on. So
there's a lot in this book that's not really, yeah.
they have to at particular times say, okay, it'd be great to go through all of the theory of something, but you're not going to be
Don't have
tested
time.
on any of it.
And we don't have
So,
time.
exactly. It's the example, the classic example the first week where they asked a waveguide, and they mention it once in an offhanded fashion, but there's no reason to know what a waveguide is for basic. It's only an advanced topic. And they have to continuously keep doing that, because
The percentage of a longer term, the average power of peak envelope power, to increases with the processing.
Yeah.
That part,
Well, when you're talking sideband with your audio,
yeah,
your output is related to how your volume of your voice, when
yeah,
it's being modulated and put in your transmitter,
right,
increases your power. So speech processing, which is like basically an amplifier of your voice,
right.
increases that.
So if you yell,
But you got to be careful because you get over
you're
too much, then you
distorting.
distort.
You're distorting, yeah.
And it gets into a different question.
Yep.
Yeah, it does.
It does, tell.
Scatter into other bands.
Yeah.
So here's the long and the short of it. What does all that mean that I just put out? Just memorize
Yeah,
560.
that number.
It's easier. You'll never have to, if you're using your radio properly and dialing back your power, and you're just purchasing a commercial radio that isn't ridiculously overspec'd for what you need, you will never have to deal with 560 PEP or the 250 watt input. So, alright, moving on. The DC power input to an anode or collector circuit of the final RF stage of a transmitter used by the holder of an amateur radio operator certificate with advanced qualifications shall not exceed
1,000 watts.
1,000 watts. Straight on the money. The operator of an amateur station, who is the holder of a basic qualification, shall ensure that the station power, when exposed as RF output power measured across an impedance matched load, does not exceed.
Remember the 560?
Yep, just remember the 560.
560, yeah.
Alright.
Absolutely.
The holder of an amateur radio operator certificate with basic qualifications is limited to a maximum of blank watts expressed as direct current input power to an anode collector circuit of a transmitter stage supplying radio frequency energy to the antenna.
250.
Perfect. So, those are the three numbers you need. 250, 560, 1000. So, when operating a frequency below 148 megahertz, I love these ones where I have to read like 5 words.
The frequency stability must be comparable to crystal control.
There's a lot to do with the crystal.
Oh, it's wrapped around, but yep. Comparable to crystal control. So, weird wording, welcome to law. So, a reliable means to prevent or indicate overmodulation must be employed at an amateur station if
Yeah, number one, eh?
DC input power to an anode collector circuit to the final stage is excess of 250 watts.
Well, I would have to, I don't know why, but I'd have to guess 3 because the rest of them, no,
4.
4?
Yeah.
Radio telephony is used. Radio telephony being voice?
Yeah,
Voice.
please.
Voice, okay.
So, radio telegraphy, that's, if you look at the rubric telegraph,
Mhm.
right? Telegraph is talking about CW, Morse code. Telephone is talking more about phone voice. So,
So,
so a reliable means to prevent or indicate overmodulation, because you only modulate in this one. The overmodulation is not typically a problem in telegraphy,
okay.
except you can have overpowering, which is similar but different.
So most of our devices are preventing it?
So overmodulating is to either prevent it. If you can create a circuit that prevents you from overmodulating, perfect. If not, the next best thing is to indicate that you are doing it, so that you can either speak quieter, farther away from the microphone, or turn down the microphone gain.
So it's all about voice.
It's all about voice.
Yeah, that was key, modulation and voice.
Overmodulating in CW is fine though. So.
Yeah, deep.
So. Alrighty. The maximum percentage of modulation permitted in the use of radio telephony by an amateur station is
100%.
100%. That's the weirdest. Yeah, 100%. Alright. If you contact another station and your signal is extremely strong and perfectly readable, what adjustment might you make to your transmitter?
None.
It's not one of the answers.
Oh.
Number 4.
Turn down your power output
Makes
to the
sense.
minimum necessary? Yeah, it's
Yep.
pretty much none. But yeah, turn down your power until they can just hear you. That's perfect. Again, who wants to waste all that energy, right? Why transmit 20 watts of power when half a watt will do? In a frequency modulation transmitter, the input to the speech amplifier is connected to the... Oh, here we go. We get to do the parts of the radio.
Oh, yeah, right.
The input is connected to the microphone.
Microphone. If an FM transmitter, the microphone is connected to the... hip bone.
Speech amplifier.
That's correct.
Speech amplifier, there we go. And an FM transmitter, the blank is between the speech amplifier and the... oscillator. Like,
Wait a minute. And the frequency modulation is in between the speech amplifier and the oscillator.
Isn't that the modulator? Amplifier and microphone on the frequency multiplier.
Frequency modulation.
I'd say number 2. No.
modulator.
Why were you so slow when I told you?
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to pull a splinter out of my foot.
You're making me feel bad.
No.
I was rattling my brain there for a second.
No, you got this down so far. So,
Or
all
what?
right, you got it down so far. Every single one, straight on the plane. FM modulation transmitter. The blank is located between the modulator and the frequency multiplier.
The oscillator?
Oscillator. Straight on the money. FM modulation. The blank is located between the oscillator and the power amplifier. It's kind of cheating as we're doing this because we're going through every single stage, so the previous question has the answer to this one. But try to do it without that.
Frequency modulator?
Correct again. Alright, the blank is located between the frequency multiplier and the antenna.
Power amplifier.
Power amplifier. And finally, the power amplifier output is connected to the... Power amplifier is always connected to this.
Antenna, yeah.
Yep.
That's why you gotta have a good antenna.
Exactly. Alright, so, again, these questions are going to be very easy if you're paying attention to all of them because they will go through all in series. But for the actual test, you're going to be given one of these questions and you'll just have to know that particular system. So if you haven't been studying different components, definitely study those diagrams. Alright, in a CW transmitter, the output of the blank is connected to the driver/buffer.
Telekey. Oh.
Mr. Oscillator. So that's what gets me. You're looking at all these things and rename the oscillators on you.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing as well.
Yeah.
So, master oscillator is what they're looking for. In a typical CW transmitter, the blank is the primary source of direct current.
Power amplifier.
Supply.
Supply.
Oh, power supply.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. No, that's right, yeah. You
Yeah.
don't need to amplify it. That's right. Okay.
In a CW transmitter, the blank is between the master oscillator and the power amplifier.
The only thing I see
Driver buffer.
that's the only thing I see. But,
Yep. There's your driver buffer. CW transmitter, the blank controls when RF energy is applied to the antenna.
Number 3.
Telegraph key. Yeah. In a CW transmitter, the blank is between the driver/buffer stage and the antenna.
Well, the only thing before the antenna is a power supply.
Power amplifier.
Power amplifier.
Power supply in
I
amplifier.
got it backwards. I got it
I meant
backwards.
the
Son of a bitch.
In a CW transmitter, the output of the blank is transferred to the antenna. Coming up with new ways to say the same thing.
Yeah, power amplifier?
Power amplifier? That's
Yeah.
correct. Yep.
I knew I had it backwards. Damn.
That's fine. In a single sideband transmitter, the most complex transmitter, of course, the output of the blank is connected to the balance modulator.
Variable frequency oscillator. No. Yeah.
That's why I say they keep changing the names of the oscillators.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. In a single sideband transmitter, the output of the blank is connected to the filter.
I saw that.
Mixer, maybe? I'm guessing. House modulator. Okay. I haven't got those yet.
In a single sideband transmitter, the blank is in between the balance modulator and the mixer.
The filter.
Filter.
Straight up selects whether you got the upper or lower sideband.
Exactly, yeah. The blank is connected to the speech amplifier.
Mixer.
Microphone.
There you go.
What? Now carry on.
Okay. In an SSB transmitter, the output of the blank is connected to the balance modulator.
I don't like the idea when they're always talking about something specific. A single sideband transmitter. This balances the
Filter? I don't know, I'm guessing.
Filter?
No. Linear amplifier?
Speech amplifier.
Okay.
That's fine. You just gotta come up with one of those songs like the hand bone's connected to the wrist bone. In a single balance transmitter, the output of the variable frequency oscillator is connected to the This is one of the things you'll memorize for the test and then immediately forget.
Balance modulator?
Balance modulator?
No.
Mixer. It's a mixer.
Mixer.
Well, in a single sideband transmitter, the mixer is the part that has 3 inputs and 1 output. So it's pretty likely that's going to be the answer.
Yeah, but we don't know that. Only the people.
I just read that today, or yesterday. I can't remember. Yesterday, I think.
Okay. The output of the blank is connected to the mixer, sorry. So where's the mixer go?
Oh yeah, right. Radio frequency oscillator?
Nope, we're back to the variable frequency oscillator. Radio frequency oscillator was the first one we did. So, alright, in a single sideband transmitter, the blank is in between the mixer and the antenna.
Balance modulator?
No.
Linear amplifier, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
The last thing before the antenna is always the amplifier.
So, linear amplifier, power amplifier.
Say that again?
The last thing before the antenna is, like, the end of it, is
Yeah.
always the amplifier.
So once we've got a proper radio signal, we just have to boost it up to the power level we want.
And put it on the antenna.
Exactly.
But I've never heard it called linear before. It's always called power amplifier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were talking about you can't use other kinds of amplifiers or something. You can't do something you can't do with a
Yeah, we're
sideband, single
restricted or
sideband.
something, yeah.
It's some kind of. I just vaguely remember that they were saying you have to use a linear amplifier. You can't use some other kind.
Well, so the reason you have to use a linear amplifier, linearity in an amplifier just
You can't
refers
use
to...
a multiplying one.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess a multiplying amplifier. So a linear amplifier is just that it scales it up properly,
Yes.
so that it's direct in terms of current output.
I don't know what the difference is, but they were saying there's an amplifier that multiplies the signal.
Yeah, so that would be a negative feedback amplifier.
Is there any correlation there to a linear boot?
Root.
Well, it's the same thing. Linear amplifier is
It's something to boost your signal beyond.
yeah, but linear in a certain way. You just can't throw an amplifier on there, and you can't throw an AM amplifier on a single sideband transmitter. It won't work.
Yeah.
It has to be one that works in sideband.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
some
what
that only
they're
work in
trying
AM.
to
It's only working
But
in
I've only got a
Yeah,
vague concept of it.
That's fine.
Like I see linear boot, they use it in radio, or if you go to a dance, then they want to amplify their music.
That's an audio amplifier.
Yeah.
Alright. Finally, the linear amplifier is connected to the...
Wishbone.
Close enough.
Single sideband transmitter is the output of the linear amplifier connected to the speech amplifier.
Number 2.
The antenna. Once we've amplified the signal up to radio, the amount that we need goes to the antenna. What circuit has variable frequency oscillator connected to a driver and a power amplifier?
That
Which was
sounds
the
like
Which was the one that had a variable frequency oscillator?
Single sideband transmitter. I just guessed.
VFO.
I couldn't remember
Variable
what the
frequency
VFO
oscillator?
was.
Yeah. Variable frequency.
Oh,
Trick
yeah,
question?
Variable frequency.
Look for the answer in the question.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
What is the
If you don't find it, then
Oscillator. Yeah,
Oscillator.
variable frequency oscillator controlled CW transmitter. Alright. What type of modulation system changes the amplitude of an RF wave for the purpose of conveying information?
amplitude modulation. Amplitude modulation.
Yeah, amplitude modulation. Look for the question in the answer. Alright, which emission type does the instantaneous amplitude envelope of the RF signal vary in accordance with modulating audio?
Instantaneous amplitude. Yeah. Amplitude modulation. Yeah.
Yep. Amplitude changes, amplitude modulation. Alright, Morse code is usually transmitted by radio as voice modulated carrier.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Three.
Continuous carrier?
No. Interrupted carrier. That's what it
Off
is.
and on,
interrupted.
off and on, off and
Yeah,
on.
so I said off
Yeah.
and on. Yeah.
Continuous
wave.
wave.
Continuous carrier would just be like "ee," which contains nothing.
And that's really easy to sleep to. I have clocks that do that.
Really?
Wake up in the morning.
The best is you need like rock and roll, right? So that I get up and jam out too. Alright, we're finally through all of the parts of a radio. Moving on. An RF oscillator should be electrically and mechanically stable. This is to ensure the oscillator does not
Number 2?
drift in frequency. Yeah, that's what it means by stable. Drift is a concern in some older rigs, but modern ones you should be perfectly fine on. So, but yeah, if you do have an older radio, then you may have to watch out for it. When it starts to heat up, it starts to drift off a little bit. So, what is the term for the average power supplied to an antenna transmission line during one RF cycle at the crest of the modulation envelope? Yep. What is the usual bandwidth of a single sideband and amateur signal?
You said it wasn't over 3, so
Number 3.
3 and
2 to 3.
3 and 6 kilohertz?
Number 2. Number 1, sorry.
Yep. So between 2 and 3 kilohertz. 3 kilohertz is kind of what you would go with for a ballpark number, but because it is frequency modulated, the more frequency it is modulating, the larger it becomes, right? So.
You know, I like that, but I like my answer.
Try to tell that to the examiner, right?
Yeah. No, you know, it says 2 is the answer, really. But it can go 2.6 or 2.7. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it can
Yeah.
get all the way up to 3 kilohertz almost.
Yeah,
So.
and I remember that. It's variable.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Alrighty. In a typical single sideband phone transmitter, which circuit processes signal from the balanced modulator and sends signal to the mixer? So you really have to read that again. That's like what you did.
Yeah, single sideband. I thought we were done with this shit. Single sideband transmitter.
I'll say IF amplifier.
Yes, number 4.
IF amplifier?
I don't know, filter.
Filter.
Gotta read that stuff.
Yeah. So the homework for this week is definitely going to be double check through all of that and
Yeah,
study
over and over again.
Yeah, we'll do 12 and 13.
Mm.
Yeah.
What is one advantage of carrier suppression in a double sideband phone transmission?
Number 1 so far.
Number 1.
More power can be put into the sidebands for a given power amplifier capacity? That's correct. Yeah, if you don't have to amplify the carrier, you can use all that power elsewhere. Yeah, if you're not amplifying the carrier, you can amplify other things. Alright, the purpose of balanced modulator in a single sideband transmitter is to
Number 3.
Number 1.
Number 1, suppress the carrier and pass on 2 sidebands. So,
Balanced modulator.
Yeah, percentage modulator.
It's a hint in there is balance. It's gotta
Yeah.
be 2.
Yeah, I got caught.
yep, and then you need to eliminate one of the sidebands with the filter. So, what kind of emission would your FM transmitter produce if its microphone failed to work? Technically, the correct answer is not much, but
That's your number 2?
Number 2.
non-modulated carrier. Yeah, so it would, I mean,
Yeah.
but I think like your microphone not working, you wouldn't even get that's probably what's broken is the button, not the actual microphone, but
But still not much is a good answer.
exactly, yeah. If you can't can't modulate what's not there. Why is FM voice best for local VHF/UHF radio communications?
That's your number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's straight into the money. Yep, thanks to that good old carrier lock. What is the usual bandwidth of a frequency modulated amateur signal for plus or minus 5 kilohertz deviation? So if you remember the plus or minus 5 kilohertz deviation, is that narrow or wideband FM?
Number 3?
And it would be, this plus or minus 5 would have to be 5 above and 5 below. So it would be 10.
So,
It would be 5, 10
Yeah.
to 20?
so we remember that wideband FM is 15 megahertz plus or minus 5 kilohertz.
Oh, is that?
So it can be down to 10 or up to 20. So,
That's a lot of cobwebs in there to get that answer.
Gotta get, yeah.
okay, it should be 15. But what emanation is produced by a reactance modulator connected to an RF power amplifier? This is all basically bundled up in what does this word mean?
Correct.
Phase modulation.
Phase modulation? Yep. And then this goes into the carrier modulator. Why isn't frequency modulation FM phone used below 28.0 megahertz?
And what would exceed limits and regulations?
Yep. So FM is pretty wideband. So, when switching from receive to transmit,
Number 1.
Number 1.
should be muted. Yep. Or you'll fry your receiver. So,
I was gonna say turn it off.
yeah, basically. A switching system to enable the use of one antenna for a transmitter and receiver should also disconnect the antenna tuner.
Disable the unit not being used.
Exactly. Not many people have separate transmitters and receivers much anymore. They're pretty much transceivers, but if you do, make sure that your switch doesn't send the signal that you're transmitting back into your RF directly, or your receiver, sorry, directly, or bad things. Bad things.
Smoke.
Yeah, exactly. An antenna changeover switch in a transmitter-receiver combination is necessary.
Number 3.
So one antenna can be used for a transmitter and receiver? Yep. See, this is weird though, because technically number 1 also pretty well. Good.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Industry Canada, some of the multiple answers being correct. No?
That's half of it. Where's 3's at both sides, right? It's not
Okay.
just for receiver. If they said receiver and transceiver.
Fair enough. Okay, I guess I could see that. Yeah, they need to
It's
share.
tricky.
So.
Yeah, but what does the changeover switch relate to?
I like that circular thing they had, that loop.
I never did figure that out.
Yeah, I didn't figure that one out
No, I
either.
didn't either.
Which loop?
They have a loop of
Oh man, so everybody saw this.
coax
Yeah.
used as that switch, and it's always on. But it's because it's there, that thing.
Okay.
What page is that, Jeff?
1316.
Yeah.
That's your switch, and it's always connected. But you're using diodes to, and the length of the cabling to prevent transmission through the line.
Oh,
That's what I got mixed
oh
up.
man. So
I don't even know why they bother putting that in there.
you know, so what it is they've got quarter wave to the transmit, another half wave to the receive, and then
Quarter wave again.
quarter wave back, so that
What's the amplifier got to do with that?
That's a switch.
yeah. No, so
That's a
Yeah,
switch.
but it's a
They're saying
linear.
it can't go through the quarter wave.
It's a linear amplifier. Is there a difference?
no. So it has nothing to do with the power that comes into it. What they're trying to do is use the standing wave ratio, so that power is only sent out to the transmit antenna, but when it's received, it comes in, right? But it doesn't go out both. So
It's the automatic switch. It's not a switch.
it's not really a switch. That's dirty. That's
Yeah,
just buy an antenna switch.
I hope we
But-
don't have to know that one.
No, it's not in here. I
Okay.
didn't see any of it.
I
So.
thought that was poorly labeled too. I really scratched my head on that one.
Yeah.
All right. With a digital communication mode based on a computer sound card, what is the result of feeding too much audio into the transceiver? This is a pretty common problem.
Sputter or out of channel emissions.
So, You're causing overmodulation. The source of the audio is irrelevant here. It doesn't matter if it's coming out of the computer. A circuit designed to increase the level of its input signal is called...
Amplifier.
Amplifier.
Amplifier, yeah.
If an amplifier becomes nonlinear, the output signal would have serious problems because your linear
Become distorted.
Become distorted, yeah.
Yeah. So, to increase the level of a very weak signal from a microphone, you should use
RF amplifier.
Audio amplifier.
audio amplifier.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't connect an RF amplifier to your microphone. Bad things. Bad things.
That's why they don't let us do it right now.
There's so many, you can get so many backwards here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You just gotta pay attention to some of the words they use. Alright, the range of frequencies to be amplified by a speech amplifier is typically... Anybody who works on like phone lines would know this one.
3 to 300.
3 to 300?
3,000.
Yeah, 300 to 3,000. That's typically where we talk at.
Because they don't want the bass and they don't want the high stuff.
Exactly. So we don't actually hear, we do hear 20 to 20,000 hertz, but we don't talk at 20,000 hertz. I don't know anybody with that high of a voice, so... anyway. So what we're trying to do here at 300 to 3,000 is trim off all of the excess stuff. Deep bass sounds and high kind of tinny notes on us. It sounds a lot like it does over a phone because that's what we use there. That's also why we need 3 kilohertz of bandwidth, because we need to encode 3 kilohertz of audio, essentially. What causes splatter interference?
I'd say number 1.
Overmodulation of a transmitter? That's correct. In a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is connected to the input of the radio frequency amplifier. We're back to it. Now we're just doing receivers.
See the antenna?
That's correct. In a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is connected between the antenna and the mixer.
The radio frequency amplifier.
That's correct. In a frequency modulation receiver, the output of the local oscillator is fed to the mixer. Yep. In a frequency modulation receiver, the output of the blank is connected to the mixer.
Local oscillator.
Yep. In a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is between the mixer and the intermediate frequency amplifier.
Filter. I'm guessing. You gotta guess if you don't know.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. In a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is located between the filter and the limit. And the limit.
Limit's the word, intermediate frequency amplifier.
Limit.
Or no, what's it's going to be the RF.
The filter and
Radio frequency amplifier.
Radio frequency amplifier.
Keep waiting, man. Why did you type when I tell you? Then I wouldn't.
Sorry. In a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is in between the intermediate frequency amplifier and the frequency discriminator.
The oscillator?
Limiter.
Or limiter.
change names here.
Yep.
What's the difference between the oscillator and the limiter?
So the limiters are going to, let's see, the frequency receiver is the blade between intermediate frequency amplifier and the frequency discriminator. So the limiter is going to, let's see, it reduces any of the RF signal that's not a part of the primary signal we're looking to take out. So, and it's between that and the local oscillator.
You could almost filter that, couldn't you?
Well, no, so the filter is used to take only one of the side bands because the audio is encoded in both sides.
Limiter's sort of like a filter, isn't
Kind of, yeah.
it? Yeah. It's a real language, isn't it? The whole...
I could see I'll have to just go and do some review work here.
Yeah, just photocopy those pages and keep memorizing them, just flipping them back and forth.
Basically,
Remember radio frequency and audio frequency too. Like if you see RF, don't think RF, say it to yourself, radio frequency.
Yeah.
And that'll help you when you look into it.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding. Like a lot of this, they use so much jargon,
Yeah.
and a lot of times they don't go back and explain it.
Yeah.
And there isn't a good glossary.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're thinking, you see RF, AF, and you don't, if you say radio frequency,
Yeah.
audio frequency, audio being audio, and if you're talking about a microphone, then usually your answer's gonna be audio, right? And that's a couple of the questions are like that.
Yeah.
So but you CRF, you don't,
Yeah.
your mind doesn't say what it is. So read it out to yourself. When you see the question, say radio frequency to yourself. It may help you get a couple more questions, so you don't get confused.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding. I've got to go
Yeah.
and sort of learn. You got to learn the language.
Because you read it too quick. And
Yeah.
and then you just say RFAF. And then,
Yeah, that's the other thing, I notice I make a lot of mistakes when I'm going too quick.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think Bob's 100% right, because there's a lot of jargon here.
Oh, I know.
You gotta learn the jargon.
And it's not consistent. Like
No.
it drives me nuts. I'm still struggling with electricity. I was listening to some of the videos again there on that.
And it's very good for Alex to say, you know, read 9 through 12. And you read 9 through 12, that's very good.
And then you
But
get
you end up going back to 8 because there's something at 8 that relates to what's in 10. And you don't get, you know, it's...
That's good.
And like Alex was telling you too, remember, usually there's one or two that you can eliminate. So
Yeah.
try, when you're doing the test, think of that too. Eliminate the really obvious ones that are not the right answer. Get it down to 1 to 2 or 3 or 2, usually it's down to 2. And that's where you get it.
Yeah. New York, Connecticut, probably not right.
Well, one of the things you can do for this as well, you're only going to have 6 of these total. 1 for a CW, 1 for FM, and 1 for single sideband in both receive and transmit. So even if you flunk this section, you've only got 6 questions wrong, and you still have a nice margin to play around with.
I wasn't thinking about flunking. I was...
Yeah,
Good for you. That's the attitude.
exactly. Yeah,
Hey, you still get your advance with 20 wrong,
yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, there's a lot.
or not advance, what do you call that thing?
the honors. Yeah,
Honors.
you can get your advance with 30 wrong. So, or
Okay.
no, because it's because you have to get
15.
75% out of
It's only 50
50.
questions.
Maybe 75% of
Is it the
50.
same
70% pass.
Yeah, 70%.
So you're 2 points a question.
Is it the same
Yeah, so
format
15.
as this? Like you got a book and you can study it
Yep.
and build the questions?
The same book, is a light blue color, Excel, same price.
But same idea.
Yeah, they just go into the more electronics, time constants and all that stuff.
We talk about this here, but I was reading that RAL book,
Hmm?
the big bugger,
Yeah.
and there's so much in grounding.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but you just gotta remember that right now you're thinking, like, we're gonna concentrate on and get you through the basic.
Yeah.
And then once you get that, then you say, okay, if you really want to go further, like you want to get into remote operations and power and stuff, then say, okay, I'm going to get on the air, but keep reading your book when you get a chance. And then when you get a chance, get the advanced book, but do it soon. Don't wait 2 or 3 years.
Oh,
The
yeah.
longer you wait, you start forgetting.
Yeah, you can't put the book down once you start.
You know.
Because I mean-
you know, if you want the advanced, if you get the basic with honors, you can get your advanced too. It's just a little bit more work.
Yeah.
So a classic example of what you go into the advanced is each of these components, you just have to know what they connect to in terms of basic. In the advanced, you would go through every component and say, okay, well, how do we build a radio frequency amplifier, right? And how does that work with an amplifier circuit and the feedback and the resistors?
So you
So,
can build a radio
Hmm?
and learn each component as you're building it. The only thing is you can't operate it.
Until you get the advanced, yeah.
So, but that would be a learning tool to build it.
That's why Heathkit did so well when they were around.
Is to
Built
build a
your-
radio and
built your
learn the components, eh?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alrighty, in a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is located between the limiter and the audio frequency amplifier.
Oscillator or discriminator.
In a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is located between the speaker or headphones and the frequency discriminator.
Audio amplifier.
Yeah. And in a frequency modulation receiver, the blank is connected to the audio frequency amplifier output.
Speaker headphones.
Yep, exactly. Alright, it's a single sideband now. In a single sideband and CW receiver, the antenna is connected to the
Radio.
Radio frequency amplifier. Tree.
Yep. In a single sideband CW receiver, the output of blank is connected to the mixer.
I'm gonna guess one.
Radio frequency amplifier, decent. In a single sideband CW transceiver. Oh, single sideband and CW. I was like single sideband CW. Single sideband and CW receiver, the blank is connected to the radio frequency amplifier and the local oscillator.
That's a mixer.
That's correct. Alrighty. In a single sideband and CW receiver, the output of the blank is connected to the mixer.
Yeah, that's the intermediate frequency amplifier.
Gotta watch these oscillators.
Yeah. In a single sideband and CW receiver, the blank is between the mixer and the intermediate frequency amplifier.
Now we'll go to the filter.
Straight up. In a single sideband and CW receiver, the blank is between the filter and the product detector.
No, I'm not gonna
Beat
do it
oscillator.
yet.
Try this.
I had it backwards again.
Oh, that's fine. In a single sideband and CW receiver, the blank output is connected to the audio frequency amplifier.
That's your local oscillator? No, product detector. Can you explain that one?
Product detector, because in single sideband and CW, you have to take a carrier and mix it with the original signal. So, for example, in CW, you get a continuous wave that's been modulated with a tone. You then have to take the tone essentially out of the carrier. And so the product detector determines what the product was when you overlaid those two signals. So, because you multiply the tone by the carrier wave in order to get the output signal. And so this is detecting what the product was to get the actual original signal out. Cool.
Cool.
In a single sideband and CW receiver, the output of the blank is connected to the product detector.
Do I get a beat oscillator in here somewhere?
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, you guessing, you bugger?
Do I get a beat oscillator in here somewhere?
No.
Yeah, there you go. In a single sideband and CW receiver, they're very similar, aren't they? The blank is connected to the output of the product detector.
A local oscillator. Audio frequency.
Amplifier.
So we're now there, so we know what comes after this, right?
Yeah.
In a single sideband and CW receiver, the blank is connected to the output of the audio frequency amplifier.
Speaker headphones.
Exactly. So when you get to the audio amplifier or the RF amplifier, it's always the antenna or the microphone, respectively. The figure in a receiver's specification, which indicates the sensitivity, is the... Oh, we're also done finally with the receiver design. So,
Number 3.
Number 3.
that's correct. How subtle the signal can make and how big the signal can be with a good signal-to-noise ratio. If two receivers of different sensitivity are compared, the less sensitive receiver will produce.
Number 3.
More than one signal? Less signal, more noise. So you're picking up a lot of static. Which of the following modes of transmission is usually detected with a product detector?
Suppressed carrier, I'm guessing.
That's correct, yep. That and CW, but CW is on there, so we get that one. A receiver designed for single sideband reception must have a BFO, beat frequency oscillator, because it beats with the received frequency to produce other sidebands.
The suppressed carrier must be replaced for detection.
Yep. So, a receiver receives an incoming signal of 3.54 megahertz, and the local oscillator produces a signal of 3.995 megahertz. To which frequency should the IF be tuned? That's the intermediary frequency oscillator. Okay, step one, which one is absolutely wrong?
The bottom, number 4.
Exactly, this one makes no sense. How do we get there? So,
I like the top myself, but
this one?
yeah.
So that the IF should be tuned to exactly the same thing as the
No, I
local
don't think
oscillator?
Yeah.
So,
A shade higher.
no. Quite a bit different. So you take the local oscillator, you minus the, what was the other one?
Subtracted.
Incoming signal, and that gives you the intermediary frequency that you need to tune to.
All right. Yeah.
What kind of filter would you use to attenuate an interfering carrier signal while receiving a single sideband transmission? filter.
Why do I
It's a piece of cable.
why do I see a notch filter in my mind?
That's because it's correct. Yeah.
Is there a glitch in the notch?
I don't know. What is an
Right.
all-pass filter? It's just like a piece of cable.
A window.
Yeah, a window, yeah.
I was gonna say a
Window
drawer.
A Pi network filter. It's like bandpass or not pass. So, alright. The three main parameters against which the quality of receiver is measured are
Sensitivity and
Number one, yeah.
stability.
this one.
Yeah.
That's correct. Ability to pick up a signal, signal to noise isolation, and does it drift? A communications receiver has 4 filters installed in it, respectively designed as 250 Hz, 500 Hz, 2.4 kHz, and 6 kHz. If you were listening to a single sideband, which filter would you utilize? So
Number 4.
number 4, 6 kHz. If you remember, 250 does what mode?
What mode?
Yeah. What's the smallest bandwidth mode?
CW.
CW.
CW, which is
500 does.
500. A single sideband?
No. So, answer 2.4. So 250 is for CW.
Yeah.
500 is for RTTY.
Oh,
2.4 is for single sideband or AM, and 6 is for FM.
I knew that freaking Reddy was gonna get me again.
Yep. So, the communications receiver has 4 filters installed in it. Blah 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 blah. You're copying a CW transmission, and there is a great deal of interference. Which filter would you choose? So, CW properly formed is 250 Hz. Selectivity can be placed in the audio stages of a receiver by utilizing an RC active or passive audio filter. If you were to copy CW, which of the following band passes would you choose? I'm going to be honest, I was hoping Bob would be here to explain this one because I didn't fully understand the answer.
Well, give Steve a go, Steve.
He does digital.
Yeah.
So,
Selectivity can be placed in an audio stage of the receiver by the elimination of the RC active or the passive audio filters. If we were to comply with CW, which of the following band passes?
Does bandpass mean you take it out or put it in?
so when it says pass, that's what it leaves behind. So a low pass leaves behind low signals, high signals, band pass is a particular envelope.
Number 3.
Number 3, 300 to 270.
I'd say 4. No, I'm wrong again.
So apparently
Discussion, yeah.
apparently what they're talking about is specifically they're talking about
The tone,
passive audio filter.
They're talking about the tone that you're hearing.
Exactly, and a proper tone should be around 750 to 850. But again, whether or not that's accurate, I couldn't verify. So that's why I was hoping Bob would be here to be like, yeah, that's right, or not really.
How much is that going to be, Alex? 750 to 850.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
that's the correct answer.
That's
Yes.
the tone you're going to listen to in the...
That's the beeping noise you
Yeah, I
hear.
guess I would say I was reading it wrong too. I didn't read the audio stages, so you're right. You wanted me to hear the audio stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes, so it'd be the
Your voice is up in the
Yeah.
higher levels.
Actually, interesting voice is also around there too.
Well, yeah, but
So-
we're thinking of just a tone, and we don't have to have the full spectrum.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, in a single sideband transmitter, the carrier is
In a single sideband transmission, the carrier is...
It's one sideband. Transmitted one sideband.
Yeah, number 1.
transmitted with one sideband.
Oh.
So remember, we have to take the carrier.
In a single, the carrier is
Yeah.
reinserted at the receiver.
Yeah.
Reinserted?
Reinserted.
Oh, the carrier. Okay, the carrier is the one that doesn't change.
So what we do when we're doing single sideband is essentially
Take
produce
it out
FM
and
signal,
Put it
take
back
out the
in.
carrier, take off one of the sidebands, transmit it. At the other end, we duplicate that acrostic at the other sideband, reinsert the carrier, and then demodulate it as FM. So,
You know, respectfully, I don't know anything about sideband.
pretty straightforward. So,
You,
I'll do a quick marker if somebody wants to point the camera this way. Be fun.
you know about that again?
Just basically,
So in an FM transmission, if we were talking about the frequency range that you have, right, we'll assume frequency goes all the way up. If you have a particular transmission and you do FM, it's going to look something kind of like that. Essentially what you have here is you have the carrier, right, and that's going to be the biggest, loudest part of the signal. And then in here you have kind of all the actual information of what you're transmitting mirrored identically across the middle. So this is an FM transmission. It's why it's so wide. This is about 6 kilohertz. Right? What we can do with single sideband is we can remove this carrier because it's guaranteed to be the same. It's just a single carrier at the particular frequency that we've added our signal to, which leaves us with 2 copies of it, right, with the carrier removed. Then we can just simply kill this side, for example, and now we have lower sideband.
now we have a 3 kilohertz width.
Exactly, because it's only half as much.
So
We did it with
half the
3
band.
kilohertz. Right? But at the other end, in order to get this back, we mirror this across, we add the carrier back in, and then we just pass it through an FM demodulator. That's why single sideband has a much more complex processing stage to it. You'll notice that there's 3 different oscillators that go through the mixer and all of that. But it means that we can transmit half the signal with much less power because we don't have this massive carrier in there. So, cool, huh?
Okay, cool.
Or you can pump up the power and transmit it further.
Exactly. Yep. That's why it's really popular in HF, because you don't have the bandwidth to do a full FM signal, but you still get some of the FM locking qualities with single sideband. So, not much, but a little bit. Cool. To increase the level of a very weak signal, radio signals from an antenna, to increase the level of very weak radio signals from an antenna, you would use a better
2.
antenna.
Number 2.
An RF amplifier?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. One important application of diodes is receiving information from transmitted signals. This is referred to as...
Sorry.
The diode thing is entirely irrelevant. What they're talking about is recovering information from transmitted signals. So we're demodulating the signal. We're taking the modulation inside the radio and taking it out so we can listen to the audio. No? No, it's fine. So.
No, it's not fine.
Okay, you want a little bit more explanation?
No,
Modulate to
I'll have to
send,
go back and read
demodulate
that.
to receive.
Sorry, Rich?
Modulate to send, demodulate to receive.
Exactly. So that's why we call it a modem, actually. If anybody's ever heard of that, it's a modulator-demodulator modem.
Modem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. 2 mobile stations are traveling along the same road in close proximity to each other and having trouble communicating through a local repeater. Why may it be necessary to use simplex operation to communicate between these cars? It almost starts out like those little
Number
train
1's a
problems.
good one.
Number 2 is a good one as well. Number 3 is a good
It's not
one.
relevant.
Alright. Number 1? That's correct. So the first thing you'll notice when you get your brand new radio and you hook it up at your house and you start transmitting 20 watts is a lot of your electronics are going to go haywire because this is a lot of RF power you're doing, especially computers. They don't like RF power. So if you're right next to each other in a car, right, and you're transmitting up to the repeater, they're having to listen for a signal, and because you're so close, the RF energy is going over the entire spectrum, right? So you may actually be killing the signal that they're receiving from the repeater because you're so close to them, and so a simplex frequency is a little bit more appropriate in that sense. Also turning down the power because now you're so close. So.
Keyword there is necessary.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, always minimum power necessary, so.
You can just shout out the way.
Yeah, really do it. Hey! Pull up this frequency!
Yeah.
Alright, we made it!
Call me on the phone.
Don't call me on the phone, it's illegal.
I get a kick out of that one, the dinner table when they phone each other. Pass the peas.
Or they text it to each other. Alright, so I got one more thing I want to add to this homework, but for the main homework, of course, read to the end of the book. So we're now at chapter 14, 3 chapters left. This week is all about law. Lots and lots of law. They put it all at the end because it's the most boring material, but it's also 25%.
There's no law in the book.
There's no law in the book?
Nope.
Oh.
there's a chapter saying go look it up on the internet.
Okay, well that'll be next week. By next week I'll have it all available online. There are PDFs you can download if you want to go to the Industry Canada website. We'll deal with that next week.
That's what the book says, do that.
Okay, go to the Industry Canada website? Yeah. So,
I think I'll review 12 and 13.
yeah, well, 13 and 14.
The 13 and
'Cause-
14. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, as Bob says, the jargon.
Yep. Yeah. Of course, practice phonetics and key codes, but most people seem to have those down. So unless you find you're personally struggling, I think you could be good to skip that at this point. But yeah,
Codes.
the big one is go back and review all of the diagrams for how things are connected. So there's a lot of struggling with that this week. All right. Hope everybody enjoyed. Safe trip. Do you want to do another demo? Is everybody?
Well, if anybody wants to see anything, I can show around.
I'll go clean up.
Okay. Yep.
So.
Lots of questions. Enough? Oh, yeah.